welcome to another episode of the Heal Your Worldview podcast. I'm your host, James Knight, and as always, this podcast is dedicated to connecting your philosophical worldview with the complex trauma we've all received in childhood and how that trauma has affected how you see things. Today, I want to talk about how to connect with how far away you are from reality. Let's call it the 6 degrees of separation of reality, just for a fun starting point. So, I had an interesting conversation, and I'm going to run with this metaphor because it's a pretty good one. When you're born with a blank sheet of paper, okay? And as you start to develop in this world, you're taking notes and you're putting it down on this sheet of paper. Now, your early notes, of course, are not in the language. They're in emotion, okay? Emotion and impression and different things like that, right? So the first part of your piece of paper is going to be dedicated to nonverbal items that start to form the foundation of who you are, okay? This is when the attachment stage is so important because the attachment stage builds you a solid foundation in which to build your ego on. If you're missing the solid foundation of the attachment, then you get disrupted on your foundation, okay? All the other development stages flow from there. The identity stage is how you figure out who you are. Who is your authentic self? When you sit in a room alone and there's no stimulus in the room, let's just say you're in your favorite chair and it's nice and comfortable and you're sitting there and you're feeling at peace with everything around you. Who is there? Who is it? What's there? Is it you and other pieces of yourself in there? Is it just you? This is an important state, right? Because when little kids are wearing their underoos with Spider-Man and Superman or stuff like that, this is them trying on different identities, okay? And the point of the parent is to help them explore these identities so at some point they figure out what their identity is. And if you have the type of parents that are not creative and they're not, they don't have a good imagination and they're not good at playing with you, okay? How your parents play with you is very important to your identity. And listen, this is important. These phases are not like one, then the other, then the other, then the other, then the other. If you get a disruption in any one of them, you're going to loop there, okay? You'll forever loop in that space. So if you don't get your identity figured out when you're little, you're going to keep on trying different identities, okay? It's a common thing where you hear that one person, when you get into a relationship, you take all of the things that the other person loves and appreciates, and you just take those into yourself, right? It's like you abandon everything you had before that, and you take all of those all of those values into yourself, and you try to become that. This happens all the time. A lot of people are like this. And so what that really points to is a disruption in your identity, okay? You weren't able to complete figuring out who you are. And depending on how your life goes after this point, you're going to either figure it out eventually, or it's going to get worse and worse and worse, okay? And that is really the point of connecting yourself to reality, okay? Because reality helps you learn how to interact with the world around you, okay? How come when you're walking down the street, you don't fall into a manhole cover that's open? How come? Well, because you're interacting with reality, you know what that is. You either have been taught or you learn the hard way that that's a hole and you're going in there if you are not careful. The identity is the same kind of thing. So if you get a disruption, you're going to keep trying on identities until you get one that works. The downside is that when you do this, you can really hurt yourself. And that's a problem, okay? Because let's say you are attracted to the wrong type of people and they don't have an identity either, okay? Now, they presented to you this identity that seems like it's pretty awesome. They seem to have their act together, They could be narcissistic on this and they're feeding off you to figure out who they are, and you're doing the same thing. And what happens to you when you get stuck in that place? What happens when you don't know who you are? And I'm not talking about what you like to do. I'm talking about who you are. What are your values? What are your core values? That's who you are. But the problem with core values is they can be hijacked. You can have bad core values. So then you don't know who you are, right? If your core values are even if there's even one false core value inside you, the amount of insecurity that'll generate is enormous, right? It's vital you get this stuff right, okay? This is the problem with the world we're living in, is there's so much bad philosophy that people accept as true that of course they can't figure out who they really are. I mean, there's many philosophies that really incentivize you to not even accept who you are, right? There is no I, that kind of stuff, right? And I understand the metaphorical part about there is no I, but there is, okay? That a lot of that Asian philosophy stuff, I think it's been twisted for Western viewers, and it is causing great problems. If you listen to Alan Watts, and not his spiritual stuff per se, but his scholarly works are very clean. He is a very good, able to share with you these different concepts, right? He's a very good teacher, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. And Alan Watts talks about the Zen gurus, they kind of screw with their students in a way that's supposed to help them, okay? And what he means by that is certain things, there's certain concepts that in life that you just can't read from a book and get it. You know, maybe you have, like, let's say you have all the building blocks. Let's say you're an experienced tradesman, right? Whatever your trade is, let's say you're a plumber, and you have 10 years experience and you're very good at what you do, and you watch this guy do this technique that you've never thought of before, and you instantly see the technique, and it is now, you without even trying it yet, you already know that it's going to work, and you're going to do it the next time you run into a certain issue with the plumbing. And it does work. And you're a master at it the moment you try it, okay? That is a funny thing that happens to humans. And when it comes to physical reality, right? When it comes to, you interacting with the world around you, those lessons translate, right? You could be a plumber and do a trick, and an electrician will be like, oh yeah, that'll work for me too, okay? That happens all the time in that space. Where things get tricky is when we get into abstract land. Abstract concepts are very needed and very useful and very helpful for humanity, okay? It's the abstract concepts that let us do, software. I mean, software doesn't exist in reality. It's just code. And that code isn't real, okay? It's just you're telling the computer a series of on-off functions, and the computer knows what to do with those on-offs, and it executes. The code is for us, okay? The machine speaks in binary, so the code is just how we talk to the machine. The machine doesn't even care about the code. But that's an example of an abstract concept being realized because you see it on the screen, right? It is a graphical representation of the code, but none of it exists, right? It's sitting there on the screen. When you type numbers into that spreadsheet, it's not really there, okay? It just has a interface that you can interact with, hence the word interface. So when you are, especially right now, we're in this complex stage of humanity, of civilization is at this really advanced stage. It's full of tremendous abstract concepts, and the abstract concepts aren't all valid, okay? Most of the ideas in philosophy are abstract concepts. When you go out and you touch grass, right? When you go out and meet your tree that's in your backyard, when you go back and just put your hand on it and, experience a connection with another living thing, that is real, okay? You're doing it right now. But then you go in and you call your friend and you say, yeah, I just went out in the back and I met my tree. Well, now the friend knows what it is because you're giving him language that describes what you did. But he didn't see you do it. He just heard you talk about it using the words, and you translated the words, and then those translations go into your head. It's actually a really amazing thing that we can do. But the problem with language, the problem with culture, the problem with civilization is these are veils that are in between you and reality. And this is a problem, okay? If you are not raised with your parents helping you have a solid foundation and your parents helping you realize who you are, and your parents teaching you how reality works, and your parents doing all these things that help you arrive at adulthood with a healthy worldview, you're going to struggle. Abstract concepts are going to mess you up. That's the problem with the abstract concepts. They are easily misunderstood. And you can see this when you're arguing with somebody, right? I had a weird argument with this person, and I had been working with this couple for years, 4 years. I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a long time. And they were having all kinds of relationship problems. You know, from the time I started talking to them, they were having relationship problems the whole time. And I was helping them connect to reality because I'm not a therapist. I am a philosopher. And so what I do is I help you make sure you're not lying to yourself. Okay. If you see things as they are and you are at peace with how they are, the rest will take care of itself. It's not like a magic thing. It's like, because you won't fight it, right? Most of the problems that people deal with where they have drug addiction or any kind of addiction is they're fighting against reality, okay? They don't want to see something important because there's pain connected to what they see. And this leads us into all manners of escapism, whatever, okay? But the real problem is the feedback loop you create for yourself, and then you find other people. You're like drawn to the same energetic level. I don't know, right? All these explanations, all these metaphors, they all work in their own way. It depends on you and what you connect with. Like, if you're not a spiritual person and someone is bringing you something that is wisdom, but in wrapped in spirituality, especially if it's new age, it's going to sound like nonsense to you. It's not going to work, right? But let's say you're a logic guy, and I say, well, you're born and your mind is like an operating system with no applications on it, okay? You have your BIOS, which keeps your heart beating, your lungs going, all that stuff. So you have your basic input-output system, and that controls all the stuff that's running in the background. And then you're born, let's say your identity is the operating system, and you then start to add applications to yourself as you grow up. Okay. The first thing you got to bring online is, how do I make this body work? Because it doesn't work right now, right? I mean, your baby body's been smashed inside your mother for 9 months. You can't even hardly move. Your senses aren't working. Nothing's online yet. So you spend all these years in the beginning just trying to figure out how to make it all work. And that is a long process. And disruptions can happen in this state, right? The attachment stage is nonverbal because your mom and your dad and your family are bonding to you, and they build this secure connection, okay? And your secure connection is what makes you secure in reality, right? Have you ever seen one of those guys that just can do stuff? Like, I have a cousin, and that guy is amazing physically. Like, he's like an Olympic level athlete guy, right? If he wanted to be, he probably would be. He never went that way, but he had that physical aptitude that was just always impressed me. Okay, so he's discovering the limits of what his body can do and all that stuff. But anyway, so as we go, we see that these abstract concepts and the more you're connected to reality, the better your life is. And so you're building your applications in your fresh OS, your fresh operating system. And as you go, how do you vet the applications? Now, this is getting pretty technical, geeky part, but just go with me here, okay? Now, when you are running an application, behind the scenes, it is accessing different parts of the memory, different parts of the CPU. It's accessing different files on the hard drive, and it's running this stuff. Now, these applications can come in conflict with each other. Here's a good one. Are you a Christian and a scientist? Are you a Christian and a Satanist? Are you Jew and a Muslim? You see what I'm saying here? These are two applications that, when you try to run them at the same time, they don't play well together. And the problem is that when we're born, we don't get an operator's manual. We don't know how any of this works. We're just kind of sliding along. And the operating manual is really your parents. right? But they didn't get a damn operating manual either. They're just kind of figuring out as they go. Like I'm 55 and I'm still figuring stuff out because there was no manual, right? It's complicated. So when my son was born, I was 20. So what I taught him was what I knew at the time, and what I didn't know, I made it up as I went. And that has its own consequences and its own benefits. And then, I got to deal with culture, how things are working. I have to work. I'm leaving my son with other people. There's all kinds of weird complications that people just don't consider in their day-to-day life. But by the time you get to adulthood, you are full of these applications on your operating system, and they are in conflict with each other, and they're causing your OS to crash. Okay? That's what cognitive dissonance is your OS is on the verge of crashing because these applications are in conflict with each other, and you're having a hard time. Okay? And the whole point of doing the audit is you go in, you do the audit, and you're like, okay, hold on a minute. Let me see, why is this app and this app even on my computer? Like, how did that happen? Because some of these applications, right, where we're in this era of sneaky data stealing apps, and they give it to you for free because they're going to try to mine all your data. They're going to grab everything they can and try to sell it to somebody. Well, those apps will then perpetuate different parts on your laptop that are running in the background that you have no idea they're there. The app put it there, okay? And that's the weird thing about humans is by proximity to someone else's emotions, we can pick up weird stuff that will assimilate into our operating system, okay? Like, how about anxiety? What is anxiety? Well, anxiety is your applications are causing a problem, which is amping up your CPU usage and your memory usage, and it causes anxiety because you're like, these shouldn't be running right now, but I don't know why they are, so I feel anxiety. So you got to go in and you got to do an audit, right? So each application could be a core value. Each application could be a false core value. Each application could be leading you in the right direction or the wrong direction. It depends on you. It depends on who's around you. I think at this point, everybody knows a nihilist. And if you're in a down part of your life, boy, that nihilism sure will sound good to you. Let's drink some of that nihilist Kool-Aid. Nothing's real. I have no responsibilities. Reality's not real. There's no consequences. All those excuses that we use to sidestep that to survive on this planet, you have to do certain things or you're not going to survive. And I guess that's a valid choice if you want to check out of this world, but what's the point of that? I mean, all you have to do is realign your head and you will have a good life. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but it's really that simple. Why aren't you realigning your head? What's the story you're telling yourself on why you can't realign your head? Did you not get an identity when you were young? What is it? Like, what happened to you? You've got to figure out what happened to you so that you could get your applications in order and get your operating system running at top efficiency. Okay? Now, enough of this technical metaphor. Let's talk about your actual self, right? I talk to people all the time that have a negative inner voice, and that negative inner voice tells them that they're a bad person. Okay? It's in there. It's like it's a bully in your mind, Like when people see, like in Hollywood or whatever, when they do a movie where there's a bully and a really nice kid. Lucas was like that. It was a great movie with bullies in it. And Lucas is just trying to do his thing, and these bullies are just messing with him all the time. Anyway, if you have a negative inner voice, you have an onboard bully yelling in your ear of what a worthless piece of crap you are. Jesus, just stop and connect with that if you have a negative inner voice. You have a bully in your head, and that bully is quite ruthless. Well, what's the only way you can get a bully out of your head? Well, in reality, you have to punch them in the nose so that they go away. Well, how the hell do you do that emotionally? That is a tall order. And this is where, psychology and the mental health community tries to figure out how to do that. The problem is everyone is fairly unique on this, and you can't build a one-size-fits-all plan or treatment plan that will actually work for everyone. But the problem with medicine is that's what they do, right? They're scientific. It's the science in medicine that helps advancements move forward and helps us discard any bad information that we were chasing. At least that's what it's supposed to do, even though the medical community is completely full of crap right now. They've been full of crap my whole life, right? The low-fat diet, if you trace it back to its origin, it's been a lie the whole time, but the medical community sure did jump on that grenade and perpetuate it for my entire life. They still are. They still sell fat-free yogurt as if the fat is a problem. Right? It's astonishing how this stuff just will never die. It'll never die, right? So we're surrounded by this bad information, masqueraded as good information. And it's tough out there, people. I get it. The only way, if you're having a hard time in your life right now and you're hearing the sound of my voice, the only way for you to not have a hard time is you gotta get connected to reality. Whatever you're pursuing that is taking you away from reality, you've got to rein it in, okay? And I'm not preaching at you here. I'm just saying you need to go and touch some grass, especially if you're the type that has an anxious mindset and that anxiety bot that's inside you is generating all these scenarios of doom and gloom, right? The doom spiral, I talked about that before. If you have a doom spiral, you've got to get your head into reality because the doom spiral requires reality not to be real. It requires that you can make up whatever the hell you want so that you can torment yourself and wind your own clock, right? You're sitting there making yourself feel like shit and you don't even realize you're doing it. How to help someone in this headspace is very difficult. I've talked to many people that have a negative inner voice, and that thing it's tough. It is a tough nut to crack. And then we're not even talking about narcissism and borderline and all that shit. We're just talking about the negative inner voice and how detrimental that is to someone's well-being. So this stuff is always on my mind, okay? And the reason I'm doing this podcast is because I need to really get serious about laying down these thoughts and these ideas and seeing if it helps everybody. It seems to help, but also it's really hard to I have yet to dethrone a negative inner voice. Okay, and I've been doing this for I don't know 15 years, like just at an amateur level, where I counsel people from the philosophical side of the equation, right? You know, the mental health stuff is important. It gets you to connect cause and effect in your upbringing, but the damage is done in the way you see the world, okay? And by the time you get to adulthood, a lot of things that you think are real are locked in, okay? I mean, we have a term for it. It's called cognitive dissonance. And that's how widespread it is. People experience this all the time. People have these false ideas in their head all the time. Just look at the Republicans and the Democrats, right? Aren't they both a little insane in their own way? What do you do with them? Like when you hear, and they both lie and they both tell the truth. It's the damnedest thing I have ever seen, right? So how do you talk to someone that it's like half of it's a lie and half of it's the truth? How do you even break in there and say, hey, well, hold on a minute, okay? Because the way they are, their identity is this. They have folded this into their identity and the lie becomes who they are. And then how do you get them unstuck? This is just Republicans and Democrats. You know, Christians, Muslims, it's all the same thing. But it's reality and truth that breaks their lies, okay? Because what I notice about every type of way to look at the world is encapsulated, the truth is encapsulated in a fantasy or a narrative or whatever, okay? And that part is really hard to dethrone. And so what I do is I just resign myself to understanding that all I can do is make them aware, okay? Make them aware that there's a problem here so that they could just sit with it, right? I think most people, especially the people that pursue spirituality and new age stuff, right? They're looking for a get out of jail free card. They're looking for a quick fix. They're looking for all these different things. And usually what they end up doing, especially with my experience with the new age side of things, the new age side of things really does reinforce your illusions because it's so nebulous. It means you can take the new age teachings and you can twist them into be whatever you want them to, right? How is, thinking about the universe and all these things, and how is that helping you in the nitty-gritty of reality, right? How? Because it's easy for you just to run in the wrong direction. And you're like, look at New Age. I am running in the right direction. And then your friends and family are like, dude, where are you going? Don't go that way. That's a trap. That's a dead end. And it's all simple, right? But it's all difficult because it's different Wizard of Oz problems in your own mind, right? How many men behind the curtain do you have in your own head? The more I think about pondering how to help people get out from under it, the more I'm like, wow, this is a hell of a thing. There might not be a solution for it, but you got to try. Just don't try in the wrong direction and make everything worse. That's the hallmark of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. My intentions are to help you, and if I pull you into a cul-de-sac and derail your life, I didn't help you at all. I made your life worse. Okay, so when I wade into these waters, I'm keenly aware of that paradox that whatever I do, I don't want to make it worse. So how do you do that? Well, the only solution that I have found is reality, 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 reality. Put your head under the water of reality and drown, okay? You've got to come up for air. And it's that simple. So what I'm doing in the podcast is I'm just trying to help everyone connect with reality. Just connect with the world around you. Connect with your family. Do you actually know your family? Do you know your friends? Do you actually know them? Have you taken the time to ask them the right questions to get them out of their shell and share with you their true self? Or are you looking at a mask? This is important stuff, guys. It's really important. And I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but that's how important it is. And I'm always looking for new examples and new ways to talk about this stuff, but it's difficult. And I want to make sure that you all connect with these important pieces, because the sooner you connect with them, the sooner you feel better. And that's the whole point. It's like you're trying to feel better. And how are you going to do that if you don't get to reality and start from there? I hope this helped, right? I know sometimes I can go in some strange directions, but I hope they always help. I hope they always make it easier for you to see different parts of yourself that you're struggling with and how you might, make new strategies to help you feel better and more at peace with the world around you. So once again, I thank you for listening to another episode of the Heal Your World podcast. If you found value here, if you could like or possibly subscribe to the channel, that'd be great. It gets my message out there. And as always, I'll see you on the next one, and have a great day.